Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Living Well Show. My name is Ethel Poplampo and today is just going to be entertaining and informing just as all the other episodes. We are also live on Facebook at Metro TV GH and also on Twitter. As I've said, today's show is going to be informative and educative. But before we get into the conversation, let's take a quick short break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Now let's take our inspirational quote. Right, that was our inspirational quote. Now, today's topic is stroke. Yes, it is stroke. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of people come out to talk about their condition and their battles with stroke. We saw Black Stars legend Junior Agogo also passing away because of stroke. Recently, Hailey Bieber also came out to talk about her battles with stroke. So, stroke is our topic for today. We are going to dissect it and tell you whatever you need to know about stroke, how to prevent it, how to treat it, and everything. So let's take the profiles of our guests for today. So just as the profiles indicates, we have well-abled doctors to help us dissect today's topic. So Dr. Nyama and Dr. Usi, thank you for joining us. And just as we do every Saturday on this show, we are going to the streets to hear what the people know about stroke. And also today we have a twist. We'll take social media comments also on stroke. So stay tuned.
Stroke pa dia mlantie na aba na enei isan se de Ghana aye de nti no omo de esi omo ni se nwumre we omo betwa bi no ene ye 3 minutes bia no bia kwaje 3 tot na watwa bi afili ene ne hard liquors no yin na enim chemicals omo use enti be wi achi no na aye se o kidney no ene onioma bi o mu na aye mere ni nyina it leads to excessive drinking, no, it is believed that it leads to the symptoms of stroke.
What I've heard about stroke is that you see a lot of people being paralyzed. You see that some people cannot walk. Others, you can see that part of their body is not working, and sometimes it hurts for seeing a Ghanaian or human being, part of the body is not working. That is what I've heard. And say that once you get stroke, you cannot go to anywhere, you cannot work, you cannot do any active thing.
No kwasam ne say stroke there ensem bebre ne ate afa ho yenim say yese se bi betumi ache obi a na che say wadwen fa ba bi ebesizi say eye adwuma na che say no moja no ntimi ne afrusanen ewo uti ne mu ana say onipa kwa no ho ba bi a na che say no na ajojo anesa na de ba ko a amanfo bi ka ye me hu pa na say yese ofa oba na say obọ ne dog ya eno nso etime call so sa de no dog no nso ya de a me pepa enti say ye no cress ade a ne ye animdifo mekam ye hu ne ntem na say ye betwen ho afiri ho a ye tumi atwen ho afiri san say ya de a ye pa me ya eboa me
ni amati afa stroke no say blood pressure etime ma stroke etime ba ni amati afa ho no ni nyina ne say wo according to no say bia na ensan bebre nso so bia wo no ensan bebre na ade a etime ekofa surgeon so ne ba na afi nso ni amati a yenim say eye confirm ne about namu ensem so ka ho say bia kwan be fa so ne ma beda ana say obe have access in being sweet me approach to a stroke mostly no ni ayatete no aye nim say confirm ni say sex position bi o ho a etimi e ko sesa na ada we no so no de yenim say doctor for no go hu nim dia say spiritually so etimi to stroke e de ma.
Right, welcome back. Sometimes I wish you could hear the conversations we have behind the scenes, but those were interesting views, and let me be quick to add that the management of KIDI has come out to say that KIDI is not suffering from stroke, so I will entreat us all to respect that and keep the conversation the right way. Once again, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Kelvin, I was asking how Burton can let you have stroke. While we'll go into that conversation, most of the times when people suffer from stroke, a typical example is Junior Gogo's own. I realized that he wasn't a southpaw before getting stroke, but then after the stroke, he couldn't use his right hand well, so he had to use the left hand. Mm-hmm. So when we say stroke, what is happening to the body?
All right, so you know how the brain pretty much controls every part of your body. Mm-hmm. So as I'm moving my hand, it's actually my brain that's sending signals through my nervous system, the nerves, and it's actually causing me to move my hand, to talk, to move my eyes. Everything is controlled by the brain. Now the brain cells are also cells just like other parts of the body, and they depend on oxygen. Now this oxygen is carried around the body through blood. So if there's any interruption in the flow of blood to the brain, then that part of the brain begins to die. And that is what we see as stroke. So if the portion of the brain that's affected is the part that controls, let's say, the left arm, then you realize that you cannot use your left arm anymore. If it controls your speech, you cannot talk properly anymore. You know, if it controls your leg, whichever part of the body that portion of the brain controls becomes challenged when it comes to executing whatever role or function it's supposed to play. So simply put, a stroke is a situation that occurs when blood flow to the brain is cut by various things, which we'll talk about as the program continues.
Are there situations that the blood can happen there can be a stroke, then the body corrects itself.
Yes, and if everybody had the chance to actually go through that, it would actually save a lot of stress. It's actually called a transient ischemic attack or a mini stroke. Okay. So what happens is that there may have been a temporary blockage or a temporary prevention of the blood flow into the brain. You know, I must say that I'm an Ashanti, so when I'm saying brain and blood and all those things,
don't worry.
You have to be mindful.
Don't worry, you don't worry at all.
Yes. So if that blockage is temporary, so whatever is blocking it shifts out of the way for the blood flow to re-establish, then the symptoms of the stroke are resolved. But this has a timeline. If the blockage does not prolong, it's not a long-standing blockage, then the function can be fully restored. But if the blockage is long-standing, if it doesn't resolve within a certain specific amount of time, then the damage becomes permanent. Okay. So that's why recovery from stroke is been a very challenging area. In fact, research is still ongoing as to how we can effectively, restore function after a stroke. It's a major challenge and a big research area that's ongoing currently.
Dr. Nneoma, I was I watched a lot of stroke patients before I came to the show, and I was listening to country musician Randy Travis ordeal about stroke. And
right.
According to his wife, he was in a coma before he had the stroke. So they couldn't give him any drugs to prevent the stroke. Can they detect you being prone to stroke, and can it be controlled?
Okay, so talking about detection being prone to stroke, I'm sure you're talking about a general sense, right?
Yeah, we'll come to the risk factors, we'll come to the causes, we'll come to the symptoms. But if doctors notice that there's a stroke coming your way, is there something they can do?
Well, yes. Doctors can notice that there's a stroke coming your way, but I would say that that's going to be very, very rare. Okay. Most of the time, strokes would usually happen in the homes, at workplaces. There are very few instances where, a patient might go to the hospital, and usually the patient probably experienced some severe headache and decided to visit the hospital. And then once the patient went there, the doctor can examine, do some examination, probably check your eye. If the availability of resources, they can do what we call the scan, called the CT scan or the MRI, where they can look into your brain, and then they can detect whether there is some signs that can show on the scan to show that you are experiencing a stroke.
You've rightly established that it can be detected.
Yes.
But then rare cases.
Yes.
So what are the risk factors? What should we look out for?
Okay. You mean warning signs, I suppose. Okay. So talking about warning signs, there is this acronym that was developed some time back, and I love it. I've been using it, in the course of my profession, and it's FAST. It's an acronym, but it has another meaning to it. And FAST is F-A-S-T. Where you have to look out for certain things, and the F, stands for some facial signs. Yeah. So usually, when someone is suffering a stroke or about to, you'd realize that the patient might probably see some drooping of one part of the face, where the patient decides to talk, and then you realize that half of the face is not moving at all. It's just one half that's moving, and once you notice that, then it's a warning sign. The other thing has to do with the arm or the legs, where the patient might complain that he's feeling some weakness in one part of the arm, cannot really raise the arm or cannot use the arm as it's supposed to. And depending on the degree of the stroke, it could vary with regards to what you're experiencing. It could even be just numbness. So if you're with let's say your grandfather or your father, and he tells you that, oh, I'm experiencing this numbness on just one part of my body, that's going to be a warning sign. The S is the speech, where you'd realize that with patients who develop strokes or about to, they have this slurred speech where they're not able to speak well, and it's all because of what is happening in the brain. So as Dr. Owusu said, depending on which part of your brain is affected, you are going to experience these symptoms. So you might not necessarily experience all these three symptoms, but when these are present, the last one is T. You don't have time.
Okay.
Quickly call, if it's 911 or the ambulance, and then get the patient to the hospital or let them come and attend to the patient.
So let's go over the first again.
Right.
The face.
Yes.
The arm.
The arms or the legs.
Yeah, and then the S is.
And the S is speech.
Speech, and
yes.
then T is time.
Time. Yes.
Right. Dr. Owusu, we heard from the Vox Pop people making interesting statements about what they know about stroke. Hailey Bieber said her doctors told her that because Dr. Miyama mentioned migraine, she recently got on birth control pills, and she as a person has migraines already. So she was prone to the mini stroke through the birth control, and she being diagnosed with COVID also. We also saw Junior Agogo, coupled with what the Vox Pop has said. Is it a lifestyle disease?
Oh yes, it is. I mean, majority of strokes are lifestyle related, which is why it's important that we are talking about it, because if we know that this is a possibility, then you can start put measures in place. You see, and from the Vox Pop, you realize that awareness about stroke is actually there. People know about stroke, you see, but unfortunately it's not translating into what they are doing about it in terms of prevention. You see, so yes, it's a lifestyle disease, and one of the things, the commonest precursors of stroke is hypertension. You see, in fact, hypertension and diabetes, you know, they are cousins, right? Yeah. One always moves to the other. When you're hypertensive, eventually you end up developing type 2 diabetes. And when you're diabetic, you eventually end up developing hypertension. So they sort of move together. And the two of them combined will eventually cause problems for you in that regard, in terms of stroke. And because hypertension, for instance, eventually leads to damage to the blood vessels, you know, so that in the attempt of the blood vessel healing itself, it becomes stiff, a condition called atherosclerosis. You know, I'm sure you've heard about it in respect of cholesterol and other things, and you know that our diet is quite rich when it comes to cholesterol, so all these are part of the things that contribute, you know, to the stiffening of the blood vessels. And the damage to the blood vessels also predispose you to development of blood clots. You know, so that it is these blood clots coupled with the atherosclerosis that will eventually lead to blockage of the blood vessel, such that the blood is unable to go into the brain. And one other name of stroke is actually brain attack. So that brings up the relationship with heart attack. You know, so it's pretty much the same process going on. So if it happens in your brain, you have a stroke. If it happens in your heart, you have a heart attack. It can also happen in your kidneys. It can happen in your legs. It can happen in quite a few other parts of the body. You know, but bottom line is, it's a lifestyle disease. So if we are not eating right, we are not exercising, we are not checking our blood pressure. In my line of work, I mean, as a wellness consultant, I engage a lot with corporate people. And last year, we actually gathered some data, and significant majority of corporate workers in Accra are overweight and have blood pressure issues. In fact, up to 70% of corporate workers actually had blood pressure issues. You know, so yes, and this yes, it's an informal data that we collected, but it was about 2,000 people.
Still informative.
Exactly, and about 70% of them had blood pressure issues. You know, so it tells you that if we don't do anything about this if we don't do anything about this now, in the near future, we're going to have an epidemic of strokes. You see, because these are, and the average age of a corporate worker in Ghana today is about 30, 35. And they already have blood pressure issues. So it tells you that if we don't put interventions in place now, we're going to have an epidemic of strokes in the near future. You see, so yes, it's a lifestyle disease, it's a lifestyle condition, and we really ought to be mindful about it so that we can put in measures in place now. It's important.
When you mentioned mini stroke earlier, are there types of stroke?
So yes, there are types of strokes. So there's the hemorrhagic stroke, and there's the ischemic stroke. These are big words, so
yeah, very big ones.
So what I've described up till now is the ischemic stroke, because generally they tend to be more common, you know, because it's over a lifetime of poor health decisions. So most people actually suffer ischemic stroke. So there's the stiffening of the blood vessel, then there's the blockage by the blood clots, and the blood is not able to proceed. So the cells beyond the point of blockage are starved of oxygen. So that's why that's why it becomes ischemic stroke. Then there's a hemorrhagic stroke, which also is related to hypertension and other disease conditions. But in this case, the blood pressure goes so high. And you have to understand that your blood vessel is kind of like a water hose, right? Now, if you were to connect a water hose to a tap, you open the tap, and then let's say your daughter or your son decides to fold the hose on itself. The pressure buildup in the water hose can cause the water hose to pop off the tap, or it can explode in the middle somewhere. So when your blood pressure, the heart is always pumping blood. And every time the heart pumps blood, it generates a pressure. That's what we measure when we check your blood pressure. So the pressure goes up when the heart pumps. So if your blood vessels in your brain are challenged, they are stiff, and they are not able to take the pressure that's coming from the heart, what happens is that the back buildup of pressure will cause an explosion in the blood vessels. So then it's going to break open and blood is going to spill. Now you'd have thought that as the blood is spilling means that the brain will get some blood, right? Yeah. But no, that's not how it works. Once there's that break and the blood is spilling, it's easier for the blood to fill other cavities than to continue going. Okay. So then eventually the cells beyond the point of the rupture don't get supply. So then
the pipes.
Exactly. So the pipe is exactly the pipe is burst.
It doesn't go necessarily to where it's supposed to go, but then
So then the brain cells will starve and then die, and that's a hemorrhagic stroke. The reason why it's important to distinguish between these two is that the treatment for one will cause catastrophe in the other. So we as medics, we need to be able to determine, is this ischemic or is this hemorrhagic, so that we don't treat you for the wrong one. Because the treatment for an ischemic stroke will actually kill the person if it happens to be a hemorrhagic stroke, and vice versa. So we need to distinguish between which one is likely. So that's why Dr. Nuyama mentioned a CT scan. So typically when you get a stroke or you come in and we suspect a stroke, one of the first things you want to do is to establish what kind of stroke is it, even before we attempt to start intervention, so that we know that this is what we are dealing with, so that we don't cause further damage. You see, because time is very, very important when it comes to stroke. If you're going to have a good outcome from a stroke incident, timing is critical. Right. So we need to get the answers we need immediately. As soon as we need we need those answers, so that we can intervene and then prevent further damage.
Right. Dr. Nuyama, Dr. Owusu mentioned how important it is to treat stroke the right way. You have to know which type of stroke it is, right, and how to treat it. So what are the main treatment ways for stroke?
Okay, so talking about treatment, as Dr. Owusu said, I mean, they're different. Hemorrhagic and ischemic, you have to make sure that you know which one. Otherwise, once you give an ischemic treatment to hemorrhagic, you're gone. So once the patient comes, as Dr. Owusu said, you do your CT scan, and then talking about, the treatment, there are different ways. If it's ischemic, usually doctors would want to administer something that is going to help thin your blood, just so that whatever it's in there, as he said, if it's a clot, we'll be able to break it down so that the blood can establish the flow again. Yes, but even that is time dependent. That's why he mentioned time. There are some medications that can really, really do a good job. They're very life-saving, but then if you waste too much time before you get to the hospital, it will be useless. There's no way the doctor can use it on you. So you have to make sure that time is your friend during that time. So that's the ischemic. When it comes to the hemorrhagic, it's a very different ball game altogether. More often than not, sometimes the patient, you really have to go into the head of the patient, depending on how bad the rupture of the vessel is, to actually go in there and then repair the vessel, put it together again, so that the blood doesn't keep seeping out into the brain matter. Yeah. Okay. So these are the two main modes of treatment.
Last week when we were talking about heart attack, we established that your diet is very important when it comes to heart attack. What are some of the ways we can prevent ourselves from getting stroke? Okay,
as Dr. Owusu mentioned, the first and foremost thing, hypertension. It's very crucial, especially when you go to the hospital and you check your BP, the top one, we call it the systolic hypertension. That's the name. If the top one, you have to make sure that it is very well controlled. If you go to the hospital and it's really hitting above, your 130, 140s, you have to, start working at something. So hypertension is one of them. And for those who are on medications, we always advise that they take their medications, very regularly, because as Dr. Owusu said, this is not something that happens at one time. It's usually a build-up. So when you don't take your medications, or you don't take it as you're supposed to, and then there is a build-up, it gets to a point where the vessels in the brain cannot take the pressure again, it bursts. So hypertension is one of them. And then diabetes, they go hand in hand. So if you are diabetic, you have to make sure that your sugar is well controlled. Diabetes is a very, very important risk factor when it comes to cardiovascular diseases. If you are not diabetic, every now and then, just go check your blood sugar and then make sure that it's within range, or make sure that you are taking care of your diet just so that you don't end up being diabetic. So the other thing that's very important is smoking. Smoking is a very huge risk factor. It's actually been shown that in strokes below 65 years, 2 out of every 5 patients with stroke, is actually attributable to smoking. So that tells you how important it is. So we always advise that people quit it, at all, because it has other implications apart from stroke. Talk about hypertension, talk about cancers, and talk about other health conditions. So smoking is also a very big one. And then our diet, of course, as you said, take care of your diet. Salt, hypertension. We talk about hypertension, and salt in diet. We always talk about.
Tanyama, don't shake the table too much. I'm on it. I might.
Yeah, because what salt does is that when you're taking a lot of salt, it draws in a lot of water into your whole blood system, and then it increases the pressure, obviously.
But how do you eat without salt?
You're not saying don't eat without salt. I cannot eat without salt.
Yeah.
Salt makes food sweet. You have to enjoy life. All we are saying is that try to make sure that you regulate. I know there's some people who will go buy food or who will have food prepared, and then they will have extra salt, table of salt, by the side, putting in just to make sure the food tastes a little more. You have to enjoy, but not so much, because it comes with implications. So salt, diet is also one big thing. Exercise, of course, we all know. We keep doing them, keep fit every now and then. Once you get to exercise your body, it helps, with your blood flow. It helps to prevent diabetes. It also actually reduces your stress level. Stress has also been shown to be a very important risk factor when it comes to these cardiovascular problems and then strokes. So once you reduce your stress levels, then you know that you are not increasing your risk of developing hypertension and other diseases that can lead to stroke.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me just chip in that. So he mentioned diet and exercise. We sort of pride ourselves in the fact that our food is more nutritious than the food that the Westerners eat. But have you wondered how come, generally speaking, the Westerners or people in the West tend to live longer than we over here?
I even wanted to ask that. Why is it that in Ghana, strokes are common?
So we have to understand that, the risk factor, first of all, the fact that you are black, of this race of black people, your risk of hypertension is already higher than the general population. So that's an established fact. So if you are black, your risk is higher. If you are in Ghana in these times when the economy is misbehaving and the CD dollar is misbehaving, again your risk goes up because it increases your stress. Yeah. You see, and if you are not exercising, you see, exercise is actually one of the single most important, life-changing, I don't know other adjectives I can use, but it makes a big difference. Because in as much as our food may be maybe less processed than the Western diet, which technically should mean that we should be able to live longer, we are not. And the difference is that we don't exercise enough. You see, go on the streets on this Saturday and just count the number of Ghanaians on the street exercising compared to foreigners. You'd have thought that because the number of Ghanaians are more than the foreigners, you'd have seen more Ghanaians exercising. But you could go out there and confirm for yourself. You realize that
we will exercise, but we'll come
that's
and
a good
go with your party.
observation.
We'll come and go with your party after the keep fit.
So by our culture, we don't exercise enough, and that's a major contributor to the fact that we die younger. We shouldn't be, because all the factors actually put us in a good position to actually live longer.
Right.
And let me also add one more risk factor: alcohol. So alcohol independently will also cause your blood pressure to go up. So if you're already predisposed to hypertension, or you're already hypertensive and you are predisposed to stroke and you indulge in alcohol, your blood pressure will automatically go up and can tip the balance into stroke. So by all means, enjoy life, but you have to understand that whatever you do today, there's a consequence. You're going to pay for it. So if you want to indulge in alcohol, then you must step up your exercise, or you must monitor your diet and eat.
And a disclaimer, please. It's not because I indulge in alcohol. That's why I didn't mention, please. Just a disclaimer. Yeah.
But Dr. Wusu, let me ask this quickly. Over the years, we've seen that stroke happens when people grow old,
yes,
or up to a certain age. But then from all the victims I watched while preparing for this show, Hailey Bieber is just 25 years old.
Yeah.
So is stroke not age specific now?
No, I mean, to be honest, if all the stroke patients were old, 80, 90, I don't think we'll probably be sitting here talking about it, because yes, it's actually it's supposed to be an old people disease, you know, because naturally, it doesn't matter how healthy you live your life, as you grow older, systems will fail, you know, so the blood vessels will become stiff, because, I mean, they've lived their life 80 years, you know, it's expected that something will go wrong, you see. But as time has gone on, and we are actually picking younger and younger people. You go to Korle Bu stroke unit right now, and you have young men and women lying down there with stroke. You know, so it's becoming a big deal. And as I mentioned, from the data that I have gathered from my facility, this is not even a whole Accra facility, just my small facility. We saw about 2,000 people, 70% of them had blood pressure issues. You know, so it tells you that in the next 5 to 10 years, we could be seeing a lot more stroke victims who are under 40. You know, so it's no longer an old people disease. We need to face that fact. It's no longer an old people disease. And the longer it takes us to recognize this, the more risk we are putting all of ourselves into. And you have to also look at even how our city is structured. If you were to get a stroke in your productive years, it will be very difficult to move about, because our buildings are not disability friendly. Which car are you going to drive in this country? So it's a big deal, you know. So we are seeing younger and younger people. I've seen a 20-year-old with stroke. You see, so it tells you that it's something that we need to be mindful of. Having said that, there are other conditions that could also cause stroke. Something like sickle cell, which again is in our genes as black people. Once you have your AS and your partner is AS, the risk of a sickle cell disease baby is high. You know, so sickle cell is also one of the causes of stroke. And so much as the lifestyle aspect is there are also causes that are not related to lifestyle. So it's not, I'm just saying this is to say that it's not all young people who get stroke who may have gotten it as a result of hypertension or diabetes. I mean, I have seen a boy of 10 years who got a stroke because of sickle cell. In fact, there are multiple, and when you work in Korle Bu, you see that.
Yeah. So, and just to chip in, I researched, and it actually shows that 1 in 8, you know, sickle cell patients would actually develop stroke.
Yes. So sickle cell is a major risk factor as well for development of stroke. So if you have sickle cell disease, or you have a child or a ward who has sickle cell disease, you need to make sure that you are following all the rules and regulations for that condition, because there are dedicated clinics. When I say clinic, if you went to Korle Bu, there's actually a sickle cell clinic set up purposely to attend to people with this condition. It tells you how serious it is, and there are ways of preventing it. Sickle cell is it can cause significant morbidity, you know, significant reduction in the quality of life. But there are people who are also sickle cell who have actually who have lived their full life and died of natural causes in old age. So I'm just saying that it is not the end of the world, but you have to do your part. You cannot ignore the sickle cell. You cannot will it away. It's part of you, so you must accept it and then put in the measures to prevent the complication so that you can enjoy your life, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Nneoma, we were listening to the Vox Pop. People made mention of sex positions. Do certain sex positions actually cause stroke?
This is an interesting question. Yes, I just have to think through just so I don't incriminate myself. But yeah, I mean, talking about sex positions, I would say that certain positions, of course, sometimes puts a little more stress on you. Not necessarily, you know, it causing stroke, but then it also has to do with, you know, the rigorousness. And then, you know, by rigorousness, you know, it's almost like doing anything at all, even, you know.
And your own physical state of health.
Yes, your own physical state of health. So I wouldn't say that, you know, any particular sex position, it has an increased risk of stroke. But sometimes, you know, how rigorous, you know, sometimes some people get into the action can actually lead to cardiovascular problems, heart attacks. We've had cases where you know, people were, you know, engaged in sexual intercourse, and then they were brought to the hospital. They had a heart attack.
It's always an interesting shift.
Yes, it's always an interest, and even stroke. And sometimes just because, you know, sometimes when you are doing it, it's supposed to be a pleasurable activity, but when it's a little too much, it increases your stress levels. Your BP shoots up, and then it can cause the stroke or the heart problem. So it's not necessarily Some people say that, it's because a lot of blood, gets sent into that. No. It's not that.
But let me also add that it's also some people also take certain enhancements,
right,
which can then predispose them to these things,
right?
Because you yourself, you are not physically healthy, and because you want to cheat in nature, you go and drink one concoction, another concoction
to impress that girl.
Exactly. The stress you are putting yourself under is not healthy for you.
On that impression, let's take our second break. We'll be back with more. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, you've missed some, but not too much because we are not yet done. We've established some of the causes of stroke, the risk factors, and also not to do too much when you are in the other room. But don't worry, let's take the aerobic section. When we come back, we'll continue.
My name is Marsha. I'm the Group General Manager of Halisa Hotels. And I'm very proud, first of all, to welcome everybody to this Halisa Health Lifestyle, which we do every month. We started this in January, and I think we have grown exponentially. Right now, I'm seeing very good numbers. It is very, very good. I mean, this being my first time, I've not been here before, and today was a struggle. But I must say, I will keep up doing this. As they say, health is wealth. I want to continue doing this, and I will urge everybody out there to be able to partner with us, like Zenith Bank has partners with us this time around. And I want all the other corporates also to do the same. All the residents of Accra are also welcome at Halisa Hotel to take part in this very noble initiative that we have done. We all need health. And health does not come cheap. It doesn't come easy. We have to put in the effort. Just appear here. Just appear here. Just be there. And everything else will flow. I think I'm seeing a very good vibe here. Everybody has been very happy. And I'm seeing a future in this program. I'm seeing it growing. And I'm very happy. Thank you so much. And keep coming.
Take it. Let's go.
Interesting times indeed. The whole public is invited to the Healthy Lifestyle Walk, so do well to join us at Alisa Hotel every last Saturday of every month so that we have fun, let's interact, and let's get to share ideas and talk more about our health. Now, up next is the foodie joint.
Welcome back to another episode of Living Well here on Metro TV. My name is Darryl Freeman. I am the executive chef of Alisa Hotels Northridge here in Accra. So last week we made a salad. Were you making it? I need to double check and watch. So this time we're going to make some smoothies, so let's get smoothing. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a tropical smoothie. So the ingredients we've got today is banana, passion fruit, natural Greek yogurt, and also some natural honey. Okay, so with the banana is very good. It fills you up for longer, so you don't end up eating a lot during the day. So you have a couple of bananas, it will actually fill your stomach up so you don't have to eat and eat and eat and eat. Also, it's very good for your blood sugar levels, so a very good fruit. So then we've got the passion fruit, other known as grenadilla. Now this fruit does wonders, especially if you're a lady, because this has a lot of collagen inside. And you know the ladies like to keep their skin nice and clean and fresh and looking younger. So I recommend using some passion fruit or eating passion fruit. We've got some Greek yogurt here. Okay, Greek yogurt, you make sure it's unflavoured and that. So we don't want any natural sugars or going in there or any other sugars or flavours. We want to have it natural. Okay, so this is a good source of protein. And then also what we've got is we've got some honey here. Okay, so this is a natural sweetener. We're not adding any sugar, just a natural sweetener of the honey. Okay, so let's get smoothing. So we've got our blender. So first of all, we're going to do is do our bananas.
Right, welcome back. During the course of the discussion, Dr. Nneoma and Dr. Wusi here have emphasized over and over again the importance of exercise and the food you eat. Right. But in 1 minute, from what we've seen, how does it help with stroke? And then right after that, Dr. Wusi, I'd like you to comment if there can be full recovery from stroke, because most of the people I've seen either come out of stroke not being able to use an arm or walk well, or even if they are walking, they are limping. So your quick thoughts on the exercise and the diet, then if there can be quick full recovery from stroke.
I think one of the predisposing factors to all this discussion, hypertension, diabetes, and the stroke, is actually obesity. Okay. You know, and exercise does help to give you an ideal weight. You know, so exercise cannot be overemphasized. We need to get physically active. And let me just clarify. When we say exercise, we don't just mean going to the gym and all that, because that always presents a bit of a challenge. I'm talking about increasing your physical activity. So instead of parking at your office car park, you can park 50 meters away and then walk. That can be a change. Instead of using the elevator, you can use the staircase.
Don't touch the elevator.
Typically, some offices, everybody has a printer by their table. Now, what other offices are doing is that they only have one central printer. Everybody gets up and walks to pick up their printout. It's actually against the rules to get somebody to pick it for you. You know, these are little things you can incorporate into your daily activities to increase physical activity so that you can start getting the benefits of exercise. But of course, if you can dedicate 30 minutes every day to do some physical activity, skipping, jogging is good. In fact, the recommendation is that you need to do that at least 3 times a week. 30 minutes of exercise 3 times a week. That's the recommendation. You know, if everybody can do that, it will improve your cardiovascular health and make you enjoy a good life, you see, so that you can reduce your risk of developing hypertension and its complication of stroke. Very important. Now, when it comes to full recovery from stroke, so it's 2 things. You can have a full recovery from a transient ischemic attack, which is actually a warning. When we started, I mentioned that if everybody had the chance to experience that, maybe it would actually prevent the occurrence of strokes. So what typically happens is that the TIA will occur, but the person would recover within 24 hours. You know, and it tells you that if you don't do anything about this, I'm going to come and I'll be established as a stroke.
Yeah, Hailey Bieber actually mentioned that the doctors diagnosed her of TIA. So by the time they called the ambulance and by the time the ambulance got to her home, she could talk, but it wasn't clear as, and by 24 hours she was okay.
Exactly. So a TIA that goes beyond 24 hours becomes a stroke. So with a TIA, you can have a full recovery, you know, but with a stroke, nobody has had a full recovery from a stroke because the portion of the brain that is affected would usually be dead. And so even though theoretically recovery is possible because the brain can regenerate itself, the number of years it requires, nobody actually gets there. So there's research to try and speed up that recovery process. You know, so as at now, full recovery from a stroke is not possible. However, with physiotherapy and with advanced medicine, they can become functional. You know, to a large extent, they can become functional and live a pretty much good quality life.
Dr. Nneoma, we'll be wrapping up in a few minutes, but what would you say to people who are caregivers to stroke patients or families of stroke patients?
Thank you for this question. I mean, this is a very important one, and it's something that I see a lot, you know, in the clinics, in the hospitals. Sometimes when caregivers come around, you know, you can tell that the stress on their face. They're going through so much. And just to let them know that, of course, this is a very difficult situation. I've been there myself. I've had a patient that I've had to take care of personally because of stroke. And then I would like to say that, you know, in all that, they should try and then give them, I mean, the patients, the support they need. Because what happens is that imagine a man who's been going about all his life activities, 65 years now, he's been waking up every Saturday morning, exercising, going to sit with friends, and then all of a sudden one day he can't do all of that. It poses a lot of stress, and sometimes, you know, these patients will show it as in the form of anger. You know, they get a lot more angrier quickly, and that's just because of the, you know, the whole frustration. So I'll tell caregivers that, you know, they should really find ways and means of managing them when it comes to that, and then they should make available counseling. Counseling is very, and that's something that we don't do in this part of the world, but it's very important that, you know, stroke patients, as part of their rehabilitation process, should go for some counseling, regular counseling. Sometimes there are, you know, a whole group of patients where you can support group, join the support group and then share your stories and then share your challenges, and then they all take some cues from that. So I think this is one thing that caregivers should do when it comes to their stroke patients.
So what's your final words?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like that he said his example was a man, because men actually have a higher risk of hypertension and stroke.
Right.
And it's because biochemically there's a risk there, but naturally men don't take good care of themselves. So that's part of the reason why men are more at risk. So we really have to pay attention to our health as men so that we don't succumb to this thing. Because imagine, as the breadwinner, if you should get a stroke, not only are you yourself losing income, the people that depend on you are also losing income. Mm-hmm. The same goes for women, but women have a lower risk, at least before they reach menopause. But after menopause, the risk becomes about the same as the men. So we all need to pay particular attention to our health so that we don't end up with a stroke. But should you have the signs and symptoms of the stroke, the facial drooping, the arm weakness, and the slurred speech, quickly report to a hospital so that intervention can be started. And if you are put on medication for hypertension or diabetes, please understand that it is the medication that is keeping your blood pressure normal. Don't stop taking your medication because you checked and the blood pressure was normal. No, it is the medication. So please stay on the medication. If you have any challenges, report to your doctor, and then the appropriate adjustments will be made. I've had patients who got a stroke after years of being well controlled, all because they stopped taking their medication for one reason or another, and then the stroke happened. So please follow the protocol that you have been given.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in studio to help me talk about stroke. I have been talking with Dr. Nuamah and Dr. Owusu, who are medical practitioners here in Ghana. From today's episode, you have been informed that you have to exercise, take care of your diet. You are prone to stroke just by being black, and if you're a man, you are also prone. So do well to live well, and next week I'll be back